before we start editing this track and mastering it, we're going to look at it again on the graph here so we can explain to you what we're doing and you can actually get a visual assessment of that. Now, one of the key things in working with those peak dynamics is whether to use compression or limiting. Compression would be used in a situation where we would want to bring more punch to the track. In other words, to bring the quieter passages up and to make the dynamics tighter between the peaks and the quieter passages. This is something that's definitely more noticeable and more dramatically changes the track. Now keep in mind that the musicians have spent enormous amounts of time often in the studio getting what they wanted and often tremendous amounts of money. So what you do is going to affect that work in a very short period of time. So in cases where the recording is quite good and you're only really needing to fix some peaks, a limiter can be used in a way that's quite transparent, or in other words, is not actually heard, but just evens out the peaks. In cases where you have dynamics that just get quite quiet or just too quiet in passages, you may want to use a compressor to actually bring that up and add more punch. Sometimes a combination of the two is necessary. The better the recording, the less mastering work needs to be done, is a general rule. Also, mastering at excessive volumes is not something conducive to accuracy. Actually, mastering at more natural volumes is something that is much more conducive to getting something that's going to reproduce accurately. Okay, let's take a listen and look at what we've got here.
It's been so long since you got a name. Once a time you gave it all to her, for love, for hope, for her. Oh, today the rain's been falling and the wind calls her name. She waits for you in candles morning. She's home alone.
Okay, we've got some challenges here, but that's good. This is good for what we're doing. We can see we've got a little bit of peak out. The kick drum is kicking real hard. It sounds nice, and it's not creating distortion per se, not audible distortion, but it is definitely pushing the limits of that bottom end and peaking out. The vocals sound slightly sibilant-y, but the question is that something they were actually going for? We can get into working with that, and the key thing is what is aesthetic. Sometimes a vocal sounding a little sibilant-y can be aesthetic. Sometimes having a heavy kick drum can be aesthetic. The question is, does it work for this tune? And as you can see, the mastering engineer can make some pretty major decisions, whereas the producer and musicians are not in the room to have a say-so. Thus the reason for many, many major labels trusting very few mastering engineers. Now let's go to the track itself. Now what we were seeing in the graph there is these peaks, kick drums, and sometimes peaking out. So the question is, do we need to limit, compress, or both?